Thank you for taking some time today to join us for the fourth part in our four-part series. And today we're going to be talking about the emergence of conversational e-commerce. My name is Mike Meisels. I'm a sales director down here in Australia. Thank you once again for joining us. Hope you're all safe and well wherever you are in the world joining us. I'm also joined again by George.
Hey everyone, good to see a lot of our regular attendees come back. Appreciate the attendance.
So as usual, if you've joined us for any of our webinar series, we're actually going to be using our own product to answer Q&A. So if you scan the QR code, you're actually going to be hitting a WhatsApp channel that's going to be managed by us. Your data is not going to be used for any marketing when you ask us these questions, but it will allow us to make it interactive throughout today's session. So feel free, scan the QR code. You'll see this in the top right-hand corner as you go through the slides, and please go ahead and ask questions and we'll tackle them as they come up or when they make sense to answer. As mentioned, today is our fourth part in our four-part series. If you've missed any of the three parts before that, please scan the QR code and pick up the recordings. They're available on our YouTube channel. If you Google MessageBird YouTube, they will come up. So today's conversation, we're going to tackle the idea of conversational commerce. And what is it? Well, if you think back into the early 2000s when the dot-com era came, the idea that bricks and mortar were finding better ways to sell products or build their marketplace out there on the web so they can be discovered. Everyone focused on this idea of building an e-commerce catalog out there and building a website. After when the idea of e-commerce started to kick off and get going, we welcomed a world of iPhones and mobile apps, where this marketplace gave every sort of developer the capability to build their reward loyalty inside of a containerized app. So you can reward loyalty by signing up with the app, building marketplace where it made it easier instead of navigating through to a web browser, but easier to log into a mobile app and find the offers that you want. The idea is those personalized experiences would be curated for you and that you could actually have your most favorite retail store on one of your first couple home screens. But as you can see from the home screen, that started to get crowded, that started to get very built. And the idea that downloading mobile apps for every single retail store became quite an arduous journey. And we entered the world of where we're moving into is this idea of conversational commerce. And what is that? Well, if you think about all these AI engines out there, understanding our behavior, understanding what we're doing on a day-to-day basis, trying to make our lives easier to tell us what products we should be looking for or what products would be more suitable, coming up with suggestions and coming up with the next best offer for what we want. This is the world that we're heading into in the idea of conversational commerce. And why has conversational commerce emerged? Well, the idea that expectations are now higher. People wanting information, people wanting access to information quicker. If we think back to the previous slide where the World Wide Web and the access of information has now made it easy for consumers to make their buying decisions quicker before going into a retail store should they want to. They can find out all the information what they want. Now the idea of emergence of conversational commerce has now set those expectations to be higher. The idea that personalization is now onto that next stage, that technology has forced us to be more customer-centric, and that these businesses are now focusing on the idea of the whole end-to-end life cycle of the engagement. Not only does it happen at the point in time of the sale, but before and after that experience happens. So this idea of conversational commerce is now where we're heading into the next era of retail. And people want to message with businesses. That's something that we know well today. And this is coming from a survey taken that the number of people that engage in a business from a pre-purchase point of view around making a general inquiry typically happens at a very high number. People messaging a live chat, people messaging a store to actually find out the information quicker than they would do previously. Instead of scouring the web, people are quick to ask and reach out for a general inquiry or ask about a product or a service using one of the messaging channels. And that goes through onto the purchase side where we're actually moving between making that purchase to actually achieving that purchase. The idea of communication now driving the idea of contactless delivery, contactless pickup, and also being able to schedule appointments when it makes sense for us. We're seeing that very closely followed in the idea of vaccines appointments, but also the idea of knowing where products are on the shelves and when they will be available for us to collect. That experience of that speed to get that information at your time makes the efficiency even more greater and even more important. And after the sale, what happens next? The ability to reach out for product support in context to the product you purchased or in context to the question that you have around that makes it more eager to keep that journey going. So think about those days when we used to have mobile apps, to have those conversations contained inside of it. The idea that these contextual experiences are now linked to the idea of what happened last or what happened next. Being able to review a product or comment on a product or be able to reach out to someone at the right time on their preferred channel, not the retailer's preferred channel, to get that support is now where we're heading. But this real world example always starts off with a customer. And as a business and as an organization, we have to focus on this idea of the customer and where they are, not where we want them to be. And this customer sits inside of one of these devices. Back in the 2000s, this used to be on a desktop or a laptop, but slowly moved into the idea of smartphones and now connected devices. These connected devices that talk back to us may not have a screen, but has the intelligence to listen to natural language and understand what we're talking about, the understanding of what language I'm speaking and the intent behind what I'm asking. And those things sit behind this channel layer, the channel layer where these customers or these demographics want to engage on, the preferred demographics of these customers. But not only do they span devices of different shapes and sizes, but they span devices on where people want to be. So gone are the days where people will download your mobile app and start to have those conversations in that app that you've curated. You're now having to meet the customer in the app where their friends are. So being able to communicate in the world that they want to live in. And that's these channels are driving us into. And these channels are needing to be met with the idea of information, the ability to digitize that data, automate where we need to, and create journeys based upon the different stages of our customer life cycle, either in a pre-purchase stage when they're actually asking for information, at the point where they're going to purchase something and convert them across, or the idea of after that event has happened and you're needing to engage different suppliers, different partners, and different stores to actually bring that data together. And all of that sits behind this idea of a central data layer where all of this data is collected for us not only to understand behavior, but to analyze what's working and what's not working and tie that into knowledge. And in the world of AI, those cognitive engines are bringing that data together in our process to automate those efficiencies, but to be able to hand off when needed to the right person when you get to the point of view of needing a person to make that decision and needing that person to engage with that customer in the best experience. And we see those happening in three key pillars. The first pillar is, as an organization, how do you build your presence in these worlds? How do you get to be discovered? And how do you communicate with the customers at the various life cycles? Well, we saw that back in the 2000s when people used to build their digital presence inside of the web, having a website that turned into an e-commerce website that turned into a place where you added support. Now those presences are moving into these digital social channels, the idea of having a social presence not only in Facebook, Instagram, Google Messenger, etc., but WhatsApp, but any of those channels that would come up where these communities of the demographics that we want to engage with may want to live or may want to interact with. So if you take the idea, for example, of me searching for a product or a service on Google, rather than having to navigate into that website or navigate into downloading a mobile app, be able to have that conversation at that point in time of a sales cycle in my search. So thinking about that pre-purchase idea, or even in the idea of trying to acquire and build a brand in Instagram, for example, noticing the brands and the influencer out there, being able to create that time when a customer wants to reach out to you or a prospect wants to reach out to you in that world. And that comes into the idea of discovery, building these adverts, building these brand awareness moments, but giving them a click or call to action inside of those adverts. So the idea where they can engage with you to send a message either on that channel or through a connected channel. But it doesn't stop there in the digital world. It can be extended into the physical world. We're all aware of how QR codes work these days. And so being able to expose the way for a QR code to actually give them that connection, to make it easy for them to connect on their preferred channel, either in print, either in bricks and mortar, or through a digital experience. But when they actually get onto the idea of making that purchase or making that decision of where they want to, you actually being able to tie into those events about what's going on. If they do complete the purchase, that's great. How do you go on and make that journey a successful one and a pleasurable one? But if they decide not to make that purchase for whatever reason, either they get distracted or they move away from where they're going to, how do you home into that? So instead of having one blanket fits all approach, being able to build these curated journeys for what type of scenario you want to pick up. So filtering in on the conditions that you care about. So customer value or lifetime orders or new customers, picking up the idea of where the source came from or the product came from or what types of things were in the cart. Building these automation logic journeys into it, but not only sends that one-time message across, but can build this whole temporal journey that spans time. The ability that you can kick off on one channel, but be able to have that waterfall approach to react to different changes or react to how they pick up those channels and go on from there. And this is where we start to idea and how we start to help these organizations communicate with their customers once they've got them into that world. But what does the future really look like? And we're starting to think about those next points, next moments. We've already touched on the idea that these experiences are now becoming conversational in those social worlds. So either in Facebook Messenger or WhatsApp or Instagram, etc. The idea that you've got the customer or you've got the prospect in those worlds, how do you engage with them in a very interactive manner? So providing richer experiences that are controlled not only from AI and natural language, but controlled through richer experiences that we would expect to find if we were looking or navigating through a mobile app or a website. So being able to provide product lists and product catalogs through those apps, get to the point of view of selecting that information and purchasing it where we want to get to. And so all of that contained in that one environment. So being able to bring those sources of data to meet the customer in those worlds is where we see that moving into. So, let's have a look quickly. Let's take a moment and have a look at what that looks like inside of the MessageBird platform. And so I'll hand over to George.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Mike. Look, as always, a lot of great info there. But as a business, where do you start, right? How do you get started? I mean, how long does it take to get everything up and running? And look, what better way to go about this than to actually show how this is all done in real life? So the focus today is going to be really on how to get customers, engaging in the website from an e-commerce perspective. If they have a question about the product, how easy is it for them to actually get to your agents or get to the FAQ or the intent detection and get their inquiries resolved. So for example, here I have a sample website. They're obviously selling snow gear. And so as a customer, for example, I'm browsing some snowboards and I say, hey, this looks nice, but I do have a question about the specs or description or something else. And so what I simply need to do is click on that little widget down the bottom. So this is our omni-channel widget, right? And we have a lot of different channels which you can add to this. So whatever channels you as a business have enabled for your customers to engage you on, you can actually add to this, right? So right now, the initial focus will be on the actual live web chat. So traditionally, web chat is quite synchronous. I mean, you get onto a website, you start that conversation, and if for some reason you do log off, then that's gone, right? You have to repeat yourself again. But in this case, it's for us, it's not the case. because we're first of all we're saving these sessions, we're saving the rich media which is sent across, and all the conversations, around that, right? So as a customer, if I do send a message in, then the agent sitting behind looking at all the incoming inquiries will actually see this in their queue very, very quickly. And they'll have full context of the entire conversation, where it's actually generated from, right? So this is quite unique to us because we believe in order to really enable businesses to serve customers better, you need to be very fluid with that incoming data, right? So whether you're working inbox, flow builder, or a different platform, you want that data to be there, right? Cached in the background, be able to retrieve at any time, call an API, and get this information back, right? So uniquely to the omnichannel widget, a lot of metadata, which is sent across within the website itself and the page, actually sits in the omnichannel snippet itself, right? So in terms of what the omnichannel widget is, it's basically a little JavaScript snippet which you can input into your page, and you can then formulate a lot of that metadata to come across into Flowbuilder, into Inbox. So what that means is right now, as an agent, I know exactly where the users have initiated conversation from, right? So down to the page level, the systems that they're using, the locale, and the time zone, right? So with that, I can serve them much better. And this information will be there no matter if the user's logged in or if it's a first time browser, right? So with this information, then we can go in and look at the inquiries, see what they need, and add any additional information that we see fit, right? So I can simply edit the contact here, and obviously this contact is already existing, but I can see that under identifiers, they've got a couple of phone numbers, there's an email address attached to them, and some other company information. So why this is relevant? This is relevant because if, for example, I'm having this conversation now as a customer on the website, and then I have to go somewhere, pick up the kids or do whatever, and I want to continue this on WhatsApp, I can actually simply do that. So if I do send a message in over WhatsApp in the same ticket, you see that I've got still full context of what the customer is asking for, even though they're on different channels. So as you can see, it is still one conversation window. Everything is threaded very nicely together. And if the user does send in any type of other media, then I'm able to receive it as well. And so as an agent, of course, I can then reply back to them accordingly on the channel of their choosing, right? Yeah. So that gives a lot of context, a lot of flexibility, and it basically puts that communication sort of choice, yeah, with you as a business, but also with your consumers, right? So they choose how they want to engage with you, but as a business, you still have full context on who's actually speaking to you over all these different omni channels. Yeah. And if we jump into Flowbuilder really quickly, this is again why the time to actually get this solution to market is so quick, is because there's really no code involved in this, right? It's Flowbuilder allows you to drag and drop basically API components which connect, for example, our connectivity stack from the different channels that we have all the way to inbox. And even if you have a third-party platform somewhere, it does that very well. So you're dragging and dropping the logic which the customer is gonna be experiencing, right? So for example, here, as we covered in our previous webinars, you can create an entire journey with automation, so with bots, with FAQ components and all that stuff to be able to serve customers really, really quickly. But if there is a need to speak to a live agent, then that decision and choice is always there, right? So in this case, we're listening on our widget, right? And by the way, you create one journey and then you can use that across different channels. You don't have to recreate it because it is agnostic in that sense.
So,
And
George, this
yeah,
is probably a good point to take a question if we can.
sure.
One of the questions we just got was, how do we support Instagram in this process? So, for example, if people ask questions around a product, how does that flow through?
Sure. So if a if a customer does use Instagram, I mean, look, for us, it's really just another channel, right? So if I do select Instagram, I have Instagram running in another flow, but if I do select Instagram or Messenger, WhatsApp, or even SMS, you will see all of that in this one thread if the customer is using multiple, or you will have individual tickets for those individual channels. So you can answer questions from users that way, or you can fill those questions using automation initially. And once they actually do hit your agents, it's already partially answered, or it might be a more personalized sort of question which needs a live agent. Yeah.
And do we support rich media inside of these channels as well, the ability to
Yes.
send images and photos back?
Yes, that's right. So as we shown in the slides, I mean, for example, like for WhatsApp, you have now the ability to send buttons, right? Easy button responses to your users in session messages as well as the template messages. You can embed images. You can have lists as well. So a list picker. Um, and I can actually show you guys this really quickly. So give me 1 second while I drag a few windows across. All right. So over here, you see my phone. It's on WhatsApp, right? And just to showcase some of the rich features that you can expect. So, for example, WhatsApp is, there is a menu system now available, right? Instead of the user having to type something in manually, they can select, what they need, and once they select that, it comes into Flow Builder as a variable. So you can use that as a keyword to reference where you want to take the customer on next. Right? And also there are quick responses in the form of buttons. So you can set this, and obviously, again, it's the convenience behind it. It's also the accuracy, right? You're not trying to fill or trying to reformat what the user's putting in, like in terms of response. Like this is standardized. They say yes or no. They come in, and you continue that journey, whether that's a purchase journey or it's a post-purchase journey, right? It's all applicable. Yeah.
Awesome. One other question we might want to take it now or talk about it considering we're in Flow Builder is how do we authenticate users coming in via live chat, given that it's an unauthenticated source? How would we, what's the best practice ways to authenticate someone coming in from that channel?
So if you want to offer this, like you have the flexibility of embedding the omni-channel widget after the user actually logs into your website, right? So in your script, you can sort of say, hey, look, only display this, like, and this is like the flexibility that you have as a website admin. Only display this if the page is already logged in by the user, right? Or the other way to authenticate is if you want to have that omni-channel widget just visible and allow customers to come in and speak to you, you can have pre-qualifying questions and say, hey, thanks for contacting us. Like looks like this is a new conversation, and can you provide us the email address or whatever detail that you use to log in, right? So with that information there in the background, you don't have to ask them any other questions. You can say, hey, I've sent a code across to you. Can you reply back into the conversation with that code, right? So you can do something like that, sort of like a 2FA. Yeah, that works as well. But look, very flexible. You can do the customization on the website code itself, or you can do it within Flow Builder to engage the different channels applicable to authenticate. Yeah.
And I'm guessing it's super easy to have two different types of flows, one for unauthenticated users and one for authenticated. So you can have,
Yeah.
some logic on the website to say, has the person logged in? If they are, pick up ads, and if not, go down a different approach so you can
Yeah,
customize the journey.
definitely. So it's very easy to add a new widget, and what that means is every single new widget you add is a new channel. So you can differentiate with multiple flows which accommodate for multiple channels, right? So right now we have an inbox test, and then we'll have a demo, and all it is we've added new channels, new omni-channel widgets in here, which are then displayed as individual channels. So you can have very clear like segregation that way.
And another question which
Mm.
may be worth looking at as well is how does the ticket get assigned to an agent? Um, I was going to type this answer back, but I think it's probably better
Yeah,
visually. Let's have a
sure,
look at the routing.
definitely. So the routing, a lot of it can be done within the conversation, and once it actually hits inbox itself, then smart routing can take over. So you have the best of both worlds. What that means is preliminarily, yeah, like from the get-go, when the customer is having the initial conversation before moving over to a live chat inside inbox, you can add a lot of conditions. So if you're taking the conversation, if you're taking the user through an automated conversation, depending on what they choose, you can then assign tags, right? You can then assign tags to the pre-ticket. So before the ticket is populated in inbox and is handed off to smart routing, you assign tags, whatever is relevant inside the conversation. So in this case, if I'd assign like a tags like for if this is a purchase, then I can assign a tag for purchase, and if for snowboards, I can assign tag for snowboards, right? You can have multiple tags, and so once it hits inbox, then you simply go into the routing, make sure that the routing fits exactly where you've got the tags implemented, right? So if the tags is purchase and snowboards, then you can have agents who are specialized in snowboards and also like the pre-purchase sort of stage, right? And then you
And
can filter all that, send the ticket into the right agents. Yeah.
I'm guessing this is also where we can start to have, being an omni-channel platform and the idea of live chat, if you move into authenticating who the user is, you
Mm.
can enrich that data to understand lifetime value or status. Thinking about airlines, you can work out which one's a platinum flyer versus a gold flyer and route accordingly to the right person in the right queue. So you're picking up not only what type of query they're asking, but you're picking up who they are and routing it to the right person, either to the right relationship manager or to the right team or to the right skills based upon the requests.
Yeah, definitely. And you can do that, across different sort of different like geographies as well. So in this case, you can have different languages to accommodate. Like if you are selling a cross-border internationally and you do get questions from different languages, you can then separate that to make sure wherever the ticket lands, it lands with the most skilled agent to handle that.
And do we support things like SLAs? I just saw
Yes,
that question come up on another channel.
sure. So there's a lot. I mean, there's a lot here. Like we do support SLAs, quite extensive reporting. You can add SLAs for the different platforms. What you think is a good time to response, right? And you can also choose the queue to assign that against, and and yeah, you can then get all this reporting inside the reporting overview, right? So great thing is you go in, you set your time, uh, and you get the stats for a lot of different things. So in terms of tickets created, resolved, average response time, um, and there's also a great feature which is in heat maps. So it shows you at a glance how many tickets your agents are fielding. When is it the busiest and when is it sort of downtime, right? So you can then schedule your agents accordingly. Yeah.
Nice. Okay, awesome. That's an awesome demo. Thank you. Feel free to carry on asking questions, but in the interest of time, we'll just jump back to the slides.
Awesome.
Hopefully you can see my screen. Is that?
Yep, it's good.
Yep, perfect. So just to talk through what we just saw, we talked through the idea of, George just demoed this idea of multi-channel support. Not only can you support things like live chat, which you see down here in the bottom left-hand corner, but we also support things like WhatsApp, SMS, Messenger, etc., emails, all flowing through. George demonstrated the idea that these flows can be built using drag and drop capability, using natural language to understand, can you deflect away? But then when needing to pass that through to an agent to basically curate and answer that question. But more importantly, using skills-based routing allows you to route it to the right agent in the right team based upon the type of query, based upon the type of customer, based upon the information that you have next. But since we're talking about this idea of conversational commerce, what happens next? Well, unlike some platforms where once a ticket's resolved, that would be the end of it. But what can you do next after the ticket's resolved? Well, post-ticket resolution is really where your journey starts with the customer. And this is where a ticket is just an interaction inside of the platform. So carrying on that idea of the ticket, you can get to do other things with it. So for example, immediately after the ticket has been resolved, sending a post-ticket survey across whatever channel. Could be an email, could be a WhatsApp, could be SMS. You get to cross the channel that you want to send it on. Maybe 2 days later, you send them an SMS offer, still built into the same flow that you're curating based upon the experience, still having them top of mind in what your journey is. And then maybe a follow-on date a few days later or after they react to purchasing the product. So using our webhook capability to understand, did they purchase that product? Maybe set up a product review, sending them a link to review that product so they give other people information about how good that product was. The idea about Flow Builder is it's not just about acquiring the customer at the front, answering those questions. It's also around following on with that engagement after that customer has landed, and keeping a temporal view in mind, not bombarding the customer, but fully automating when those messages go off and on what channel. And then building logic and action gates around it. Building logic gates around what do they react to, did they do, what action did they next, doing with it next. And that concludes our micro webinar series, Understanding Conversational Commerce. We're going to share this recording as usual on our website and on our YouTube channel. Thank you very much for joining us. If you're going to take away something from this, what I would suggest doing is, either staying with us and answering a few more questions, but feel free to sign up onto MessageBird. You'll get some credit and you can experience everything we've shown you today and connect all of those channels in one single place very, very quickly. Do we have any outstanding questions or?
I think we're pretty good, but yeah, very easy to get started. And there's a lot of good content on how to actually run these scenarios on our website, and customer stories, right? So you guys can see where this is actually relevant and how it's relevant to your verticals.
Awesome. Okay, as there's no more questions, I will happily give you some time back in your day. Thank you very much for joining us once again on this webinar series. Please stay tuned for future webinar series as they come up, and we look forward to engaging the conversation going forward. Hope you're all
Cheers, everyone.
keeping well, and thank you. Thanks once again. Bye-bye.